Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be showing you how to set up something quite unique, having dynamic lighting in a static lighting scenario. So this is static lighting. Currently my directional and my skylight are static. In fact, if I take this and I rotate this, you can see it is baked. But of course, you cannot bake on a character. But as you could see, I can turn him around. He's lit as though he's lit by this pink light and darkened on the other side, but obviously, there is no pink light. There is no anything. In fact, this is tied to the directional light. So this is what I'm going to be showing you guys how to set up. It is a way of faking lighting on movable objects when you need a static setup in purely your material. Let me show you how to do this. So here I am in a brand new project, and I've gone ahead and set up some things to get us started. So I've added a post-process volume, and in the settings, I've gone ahead and disabled global illuminations from Lumen to none, and I've set reflections to none in my case because I want to simulate a completely baked setup, and of course this is all unbound. And my directional is set on static, and so is my skylight. So both of these are set up on static, so this is effectively set up for full baking, and I've added a reflection capture for it. So to get started, I'm going to make a material function because that is going to be the easiest way to add this setup to anything you need. So I'm going to right click, go to material functions, and I'm going to call this MF fake lighting. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is grab atmosphere sun light vector. This guy right here. It is very convenient because it basically grabs the information from your directional light, the vector of it. And to be able to use it, because if you just plug it in, you're not going to get anything out of it, grab yourself a dot product with a vertex normal world space. And you can plug that in. And in fact, I'm just going to plug this into our function so you can immediately see what it has done. So immediately it has created a gradient based on the direction of the light. So this is what we're going to be using. And this is very handy for multiple different things. Now, this is faked. So keep in mind, this is not cast shadow. If you have a shape that would cast shadow on itself, it would not. You can see, right, since it's coming from above, this is brighter here, darker, but this is all flat because it's a big flat plane. We can actually also have it go in the opposite direction. So for that, I just go ahead and duplicate this up here. And before it, I'm going to multiply it by -1 and plug this in. You can see it's now the exact opposite direction. So effectively, this is the shadow that's being masked. So we're able to control both the light and the shadows. So what we're going to do is take this light, and let's focus on that for now. And I'm going to add a power node so we can control the contrast of it. Because if you come in here and I set this to 1, you can see its full intensity, 2, 3. You can see it becomes softer and softer until it's kind of focused into that original area. And here, I'm going to get myself a constant, and I'll just say by default, the constant will be 1. And I'm going to search function input, and it's going to select scalar by default, and I'm going to plug this in. So for the name, I'm going to call this contrast. And in fact, let's go ahead and probably separate the highlight contrast and the shadow contrast. So I'm going to specify this is lighting contrast because we'll have two different ones depending on if it's going to be controlling the shadow or controlling the light. And I will use the preview value as the default. So we have that. Now we need to go ahead and lerp it. So we're going to use this as a mask. So I'll hold the L key, left click to get a lerp. So what we need to do is effectively take our base color and then make it a different color or add something to it. So what we're going to do is take a vector 3, holding left click and 3, and I'm going to set this by default to just be 0.5. This is going to simulate our base color. And from here, again, I'm going to search for function input. That will automatically select vector 3, and I'm going to call this base color. So this is going to be our base color input, and I'll plug this into our alpha. This is where it's going to be masking our setup, right? So what we're going to do is take this and add whatever we want here. So in my case, I'm just going to duplicate this. For this guy, I'm going to call this light color, and I'll plug this into the add node and into B. And this output, we can rename to base color because this is where we're going to be doing our base color. Now we have kind of the directional. You could see it's as though it's actually going all the way past, but you can ignore this. I think it's by default showing you as though it's a full emissive, and so it's kind of brightening itself. But we can see if we take this and plug it into an actual material. So let's go ahead and make a material. Take this material function in here, and let's go ahead and start using it. So base color is going to be plugged into base color. Lighting contrast, I'll use a parameter here. And I'll set it to be 1 default. The light color, I'll just hold 3 and convert it to a parameter and just call it light color. Keep it black for now. And I'll duplicate this, and this will be our base color. And I can plug that in. And our base color, let's make it some fun color. Let's make it a bluish color. And then let's go ahead and bring in just a sphere for now. So this is our sphere. I'll set it to be movable. And I'll go ahead and create a material instance of this material and plug it in. So in the material instance, we can now go ahead and we'll change the base color if we want to, right? But that's not what we're interested in. We need to change the light color. And if I add intensity here, you could see that despite in the preview, in this guy, it is everywhere. In practice, it is just where we needed it. And now we can tint it. Not only can we tint it, but we can also increase the contrast so we can have it just in the kind of in the tip. So if I set this to be like super high, like 30, and then I can go in, I'll make it white so you can really see. It's just there. And I can crank this past 1 to increase it even more if you need to. So that is the highlight. But we, of course, want also the shadow side. I want to also control how the shadow looks, because right now we do get some shadow, but it is all kind of faked right now. So let's go ahead and actually build this to see what it actually looks like. Despite having everything on static for lighting, it is still displaying unbuilt lighting. So let's build it, and there we go. So you can see this is built lighting on a movable object. So now that nice shadow that you saw was because you were previewing dynamic. And so now that shadow is gone, but we still have our nice highlight, right? So we have the highlight, we can control this, we can change the color, etc. So now let's go focus on the shadow section. For the shadow, we're going to be using the other inverted mask that we created, this guy here. So again, the light is coming from the top left, and we're masking now the other side. So for that, I'm going to grab this power, and I'm going to duplicate it here. And we're just going to get a new name for this. Instead of lighting contrast, I'm going to call the shadow contrast. And we're going to plug this in here. So now the same way we can change the contrast on the shadow side. And what we need to do is now lerp again, using this new setup. And we're going to take our A, here will be our original lighting. And then for B, so I can set this to 0. And then it will lerp, of course, I'm making the shadow side darker by just lerping it to pure black. But maybe I don't want the shadows to be pure black. Maybe I want some value in here. So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to grab this again, and I'm going to rename this to shadow color instead of light color. The shadow color will be pure white by default. And that is because we're going to be taking our base color effectively, and then we're going to multiply it by the shadow color for our B. If I go ahead and apply this and then look at our material, let's go ahead and update our values. So I'm going to duplicate light contrast for shadow contrast. And for shadow color, I'll duplicate light color, and I'll set the shadow color by default to be white. And you can see here's our little sphere. So for the light color, increase that to give it a nice light. And the shadow color, we can decrease it and get the shadow. You can see it's nice and dark there, and I can increase the shadow or light contrast. Of course, if you go below 1, you get a hard line here. So that's something to keep in mind. So maybe you'll want to limit these to how low you want to go, but that is up to you, right? You can go a little bit, it might be fine. It depends on your mesh. Keep those around the same value. You can see it looks like it's not being shadowed. And again, if I turn off the shadow color, this is how it is by default. Turn the light color to off. This is how it normally looks. So much flatter. But the only other thing that I like to do is not only do we have the shadow here, it is still, you still get the specularity a bit here, potentially, depending on how you have it set up. You might get some reflections or specularity still down here. So what I also like to do is in our material function is add another output, and the output is going to be specularity. And this is a simple one. We're going to go ahead and lerp using our shadow. We're going to lerp our specularity to 0. And we need to just need an input here. And I'm going to grab one of our scalar ones. And I'm going to just rename this to Specularity, because it should only be a single channel. So I'll go ahead and lerp it between whatever it's on and 0. And the reason for that is because I wanted to effectively remove any kind of specularity from the shadow side. Personally, I found this to look much nicer when faking it, but it's entirely up to you. So if I plug in the specularity, which by default should be actually 0.5, and I'll make sure that the default in our graph here is also 0.5 as our default. So effectively, if there was going to be any specularity here, it is now gone. This function is effectively done. All of the controls are here. Of course, you can put them in the group as needed to organize this, but now you could take this and let's put it on the mannequin for a demonstration. So here is the Manny skeletal mesh. I'll bring him in, and you can see he is pretty evenly lit. So what I'm going to do is open up his material, and here it is. And I'm going to open up the base of it. So if you didn't know, instead of going down and searching for the parent, you can go under hierarchy and you have all the parent chains. So I can just select the original one here. So here's the original, and we just need to grab our material function. So let's go ahead and plug in the stuff. So here we are. I've plugged everything in. Same thing as before. Go ahead and save this. But now I can go in here, open up the material instance. Here's all our fake lighting stuff. And so now I can go in and change the shadow color to be lower. And you can see immediately, if I play with this, you can see how it darkens that side. And of course, I can change the color. So you don't need to use this for shadowing, but you could think of it as the shadow. But I'm going to make it black, change the light color, and I can, of course, change the contrast if I'd like to. So I can make this effectively, it looks like it's coming more from that direction and it's not as even. But I kind of like maybe like a 2.5, and I can change the same thing for the shadow contrast. But you can see now I can just rotate him around, and it always looks like the lighting is coming from that direction. And of course, I can go in here and rotate this, and you can see it updates on this guy, and it updates on the character as well. And I believe his head probably currently doesn't have the setup, because we need to also change the parameters on this. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy the exact values. There we go. Now that both instances have this, you can see it is now affecting his entire body. So you've effectively now created a fake light that's on him. And again, unlike a real dynamic light, you are not going to get the shadow from his arm onto his body. But in cases where you need to have it look as though it is dynamically lit to at least some degree and have some control over this, you now have it. In fact, you can actually use this material function as a mask inside of a layered setup or something like that, where you can mask a full material using this. Because after all, this is just a mask, and you can use it as you need. I hope this helped to some of you guys. I know this setup has helped me in the past quite a lot. Hope you guys liked this. Hit like if you did, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye.